Pandemics are nothing new. Even though COVID-19 was one of the deadliest in recent history, there were others that ravaged humanity before it. Some diseases from history were so weird that they'll make you wonder if we're cursed. Today, we'll take a look at obscure pandemics and strange historical diseases that you've probably never heard about. Starting off our list is the Great Plague of Athens. The Great Plague of Athens occurred in 430 BC, during the Peloponnesian War between Athens and Sparta. It wiped out 1/3 to 1/2 of the Athenian population, including the famous playwright Sophocles. But this plague didn't just affect Athens. It spread to other Greek city-states and even to Egypt. It also lasted for 5 years. Thucydides, an Athenian historian who survived the plague, described it as a terrifying illness characterized by a high fever, sore throat, cough, weakness, and an excruciating pain in the internal organs. He also described ulcers that appeared all over the body and turned black, which he likened to the so-called carbuncle of malignant anthrax. The victims either died after a few days or weeks, or they survived and bore the scars of the disease for life. However, what caused this terrible plague is still unknown. Historians believe it might have been the first recorded outbreak of typhoid fever, although some think it was smallpox or typhus. Moving on, we have Tycho-Azuma. Tycho-Azuma is a rare infectious disease that affects the central nervous system and causes encephalitis, paralysis, and convulsions. It's also known as the laughing sickness because its symptoms can include uncontrollable fits of laughter. But before it was called laughing sickness, it had another name, the dancing plague. When the disease struck in the 15th century, it caused people to dance uncontrollably for hours on end. The first recorded outbreak of this strange disease happened in Italy in 1480, but it spread throughout Europe, claiming hundreds of lives. Victims experienced brief periods of lucidity between their fits of dancing, and when they weren't dancing, they were convulsing and drooling. During these lucid moments, they claimed that they felt an overwhelming urge to dance, and they believed that dancing would cure them. Because of this, people tried to keep dancing until they died from exhaustion, dehydration, or injuries sustained while dancing. Nobody knows what caused the dancing plague, but researchers believe it might have been a reaction to rampant ergot poisoning. Ergot is a fungus that grows on rye and other grains, and it can cause hallucinations, convulsions, and an overwhelming desire to move. Next up, we have the vomiting sickness. The vomiting sickness is an obscure illness that has 3 main symptoms: nausea, projectile vomiting, and exhaustion. It sounds like a really bad case of food poisoning, but it can be deadly. There were 2 epidemics of the vomiting sickness in the United States. The first one occurred in 1873 and affected 600 people in Western Star, New York. And the second one happened in 1917 in Houston, Texas, and affected 200 people. Both outbreaks had similar symptoms and no fatalities. So what was this mystery illness? It's not certain, but many believe it was a new virus strain because it seemed to come out of nowhere. Also, both epidemics started in August, stopped in October, and reappeared the following spring. This supports the theory that the vomiting sickness was viral since viruses tend to lie dormant in the winter months. Then they become active again in the spring. But despite its terrifying symptoms, nobody died from the vomiting sickness, so maybe it wasn't too deadly after all. Moving on, we have the Spanish flu. While the Spanish flu might sound like a historical event, it actually happened recently. It started in March 1918 and lasted until April 1920. What made the Spanish flu so weird was that it affected people differently. At first, it seemed like a mild illness with symptoms like a fever, cough, and fatigue. But then it developed into a severe respiratory infection that killed millions. What's really strange is that the worst hit group wasn't children or the elderly, but rather people in their 20s and 30s. They got the sickest and died the quickest. Out of the 3 waves of the pandemic, the second wave was the most violent. It hit America in September 1918 and killed over 200,000 people in a single month. By the time the pandemic ended, it had infected 500 million people worldwide and killed 50 to 100 million of them. Even though it was one of the deadliest pandemics in history, scientists still don't know exactly what caused the Spanish flu. Many believe it was a mutated strain of the H1N1 virus, which is the same strain that caused the swine flu pandemic of 1976. Other researchers say it was an avian influenza virus that jumped from birds to humans. Next up, we have the Asian flu. Just like the Spanish flu, the Asian flu was caused by an influenza virus. It started in China in 1957 and quickly spread around the world. The virus responsible for the Asian flu was H2N2, which combined genes from bird and human viruses. This made the virus more transmissible among humans. And even though it wasn't as deadly as the Spanish flu, it was very contagious. An estimated 1.1 billion people got infected with the Asian flu, which represents 26% of the world's population at the time. Out of these, 1.1 million died, which is around 0.05% of the global population. But those numbers could be much higher since many countries didn't report their cases accurately. For instance, Russia reported 0 deaths while Poland reported 150,000. The Asian flu pandemic lasted until 1958, and by then, a new strain of the virus had emerged. This strain, known as H2N2, was less lethal, but it quickly replaced the original virus. Moving on, we have the Russian flu. The Russian flu is a zoonotic disease caused by the Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever virus. It primarily affects livestock, but it can also infect humans. Symptoms of the Russian flu include fever, chills, muscle aches, joint pain, abdominal pain, and bleeding. There have been 3 major outbreaks of this disease, and all of them happened in Russia. The first one occurred in 1944 in the village of Kiselevka, which is where the disease got its name. The second big outbreak happened in 1956 in Crimea, and the third one was in 2006 in the western region of Udmurtia. Each of these outbreaks had around 100 cases, but only a small percentage of those infected died. The fatality rate of the Russian flu is between 10 and 40%, depending on the strain and the individual's health. But the good news is that there's a vaccine available for the disease. Still, it's rarely used since only a small number of people get infected every year. Finally, we have COVID-19. COVID-19 is a highly contagious disease caused by the SARS-CoV-2 coronavirus. It started in Wuhan, China, in December 2019 and quickly spread around the world. As of May 2022, there have been over 532 million confirmed cases of COVID-19 and over 6.3 million deaths. Most people who get infected experience mild to moderate symptoms such as a fever, cough, and fatigue. But some develop severe symptoms like pneumonia and respiratory failure. What makes COVID-19 so weird is how it affects different groups of people. For instance, children seem to be less susceptible to infection and also experience less severe symptoms than adults. And even though it's extremely contagious, it doesn't seem to be getting any deadlier. Since the start of the pandemic, the mortality rate has steadily declined. This is likely due to a combination of factors, including improved treatments, increased vaccination rates, and the emergence of milder variants. Well, that's it for now. Which of these historical diseases freaked you out the most? Let us know in the comments below, and remember to subscribe if you haven't already. See you next time.